Hi. Oh, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. Yes. Welcome back to Cody Builds. It's been 3 weeks since I've filmed anything. Now, you guys have been getting videos every week, but I've been gone on vacation and I am ready to get back to work on this Dentside Ford short bed conversion. I am ready to wrap this thing up. On this episode, that's gonna happen come hell or high water. We are finishing the short bed conversion on this truck. I promise you. Oh yeah, look, check that out. My wife got me that for my birthday. Isn't that awesome? She is the best. She's my #1 fan, and I love her. And I love that sign. It looks so good in the shop. It's a nice little backdrop for us now. Anyways, I've got this truck blown apart. Let's take a look at it right now. All right, so I went ahead, I removed the panels, I removed the end caps, and I want to show you what we're having an issue with. So if you look on the end of this panel, it's got these little indents here that are meant to accept this flange here. Now the issue is, when I put this flange in, I didn't make any provisions for this panel at all. I just kind of put back what was previously there. And the problem I have, you can see I've already got it drawn out here. This line here, the top of this line is kind of where this panel overlaps now. So what I actually need to do is I need to remove this section of the flange on both sides, because right now what's happening is I can't, for one, can't get this panel to come all the way down to the bed here. And the other thing is I can't get the panels lapped correctly. We've got a gap because of how this little indent is. So my options here are either to trim this out to fit our current flange, or to trim this flange down. I think I kind of like the idea of having these slightly lapped a little bit. So I'm gonna actually trim down the flanges that we previously welded in. So that's first thing on the list here. You can see I marked this one out as well. We're gonna come in here and cut up this line and remove this little section here. Once I've got those flanges trimmed down, we're gonna refit the back panel. I'm gonna get centered up. I'm gonna get the caps kind of fitted up. We're just gonna clamp everything in place first. And once I've got everything kind of where I want it, and I know it's gonna fit, we're gonna have to come back. We're gonna have to drill some of the spot weld holes on the exterior panels so that we can come back in and get everything kind of tacked together, welded together in place. That's first thing up on the list. We're gonna get these trimmed out, and we're gonna get this thing put back together. All right, I got my flanges trimmed out here, so I'm gonna do a little test fit on our panel here and see where that got us. So what I should be able to do now is slide that in there on that side and do the same on this side. Ooh, we're close. We're very close. The next thing I need to do here is I need to get this panel centered on the bed floor. So I'll mark out in the floor where center is. I'll actually mark on this flange where center is. And if this hole here is centered, I don't believe it is, I will drill a hole where center is so I can then align that with my mark on this flange. And then once I know I've got this panel centered, then I can start working my way up the sides here and getting everything kind of clamped into place where I want it. I'll go ahead and get all the centers marked on these next. All right, I checked the original panel and the spot weld distance varied greatly. Anywhere from 1 1/4 all the way over 2 inches between the spot welds. So we're gonna kind of average that out. We're gonna go with about 1.5 inch spacing between all of our spot welds. These pre-drilled holes are at about a 7 1/4 spaced center to center. So we're gonna put a mark at 3 5/8 on the center of each of these. And then outboard of that, 1.5 inch either side, we'll add in another spot weld drill hole. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark this whole panel and get all the holes pre-drilled for this back panel. I got all of my holes drilled out. I actually started with an 1/8 inch pilot hole and then went up to 1/4 inch holes for all these plug welds. And these are 1.5 inches apart from one another. What I did was, like I said, I marked the flange in the center. It's kind of hard to see on camera here, but there is a mark in there in that center hole. And then I marked the panel as well. And I've got those marks lined up so that I know the panel itself is centered in the bed floor. And then I came over here and I've got this edge pretty well aligned. I think what I want to do next is I'm going to throw a tack up here in the corner and down here in the corner. My flange is a little bit wavy here, so I'm going to come in and clean up these old spot welds. After I've got this tacked flush in a couple spots, I'll knock out the waves and get it sitting a little more flush. I'll probably throw like 1 or 2 tacks down here as well, just to kind of keep things in place while I'm working. Once I've got this side fit up, I'm gonna go over and fit this side up. Right now, I've got a strap from bed pocket to bed pocket here, stake pocket to stake pocket, pulling the tops in just to get things lined up a little bit better. But so far the fit's pretty darn good. I'm gonna fire the welder up here, get a couple tacks in on the bottom flange and then also in the sides there, so then I can start getting everything lined up. Okay, normally you wouldn't tack these panels together. They're gonna be held together by the end caps and filler panels. They'll be tacked down the sides of them. But because I'm just trying to get things aligned up here, I'm gonna go ahead and tack these in place just to hold it in place for now. These are just temporary. I'll end up coming in and grinding these down so that the end panel can sit in here flush against the header panel and against the bedside. So just gonna throw a couple quick tacks in. I'm now gonna come down here and tack a couple spots down here real quick. And I'm not doing the full-blown plug welds just yet. I'm just doing some small tacks, like I said, to hold things in place. I like my alignment here. I like my up and down alignment so far on this. Okay, so we're just tacking things lightly in place right now. Now that I've got this bottom and this side tacked in, my next step here, I'm gonna get our side panel over here aligned a little bit better. Okay, and I'm just trying to get the inside and outside edge kind of aligned here, flush with one another between the header panel and the bedside. I've kind of got that. I'm actually a little behind the panel all the way down here, so if I can't pop that out, just a hair, there we go. Perfect. So I've got it flushed here. Okay, just a simple tack there. Hold that in place, and then I'll get this aligned at the top and we'll crank this down. Hi. Okay. Hi. Hi, puppy. You're on camera. Hi, puppy. Hi, Jojo's. And my baby girl. Hi. Hi. Oh, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. Yes. You're a good girl. How's class?
She was awesome. She did a good job. Really good job. Yeah.
That was a nice little interruption there for my wife and the dog. They're just getting back from their dog class. It's a little behind the scenes. It's Wednesday, July 3rd. So I know I've said this on my channel before. I shoot on Wednesdays and Saturdays for the most part. My wife does some obedience training with the dog, so I'll show you a couple dog tricks here.
Sit. Good girl. Ready? Sit pretty. Sit pretty. Good girl. Ready? Spin. Good girl. Touch. Touch. Good girl.
And then while she's gone at class, I get to play with the hot rod, which is fun. On Saturdays when she works, I'm over here in the shop working. Okay, you can see I've got the panel tacked here and here. So the next thing for me to figure out is how I'm gonna get the end caps and the filler panels to line up. So what I really need to do is I need to drill out those end caps and filler panels for the tack welds that are going to, the spot welds, they're gonna fall on this flange and then on this panel here. And the way that I'm gonna figure that out, because what I could do, I guess, is I could drill holes in this flange and weld them from the inside of the bed, but that's gonna be a little more tricky now that the header panel's on there. I think what I'm actually gonna do is I kept this old panel that we replaced earlier, and what I'm gonna do is, see if I line this up here, this is the opposite side that it goes on. But if I kind of line this up here, you can see that it does line up, or it does line up pretty darn close with where the spot welds were on that original flange. So I think I'm just gonna take this panel over to my actual filler panel, line it up close to where it would be. Should be something like that. And we'll be able to use this panel to determine the vertical line that the inside flange and that the bedside flange and then the header panel spot welds will fall on. And then I can drill all these out and get this panel ready to weld back in. So that's what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna get these panels marked out. We're gonna get them the spot weld holes drilled. And then we can start getting everything kind of realigned, get everything tacked into place. And once I'm happy with everything tacked into place, we're gonna start welding this thing back together, and that's gonna be it for the short bed conversion. All right, so I'm trying to align this end panel, and I actually just discovered another fitment issue. This is something that you're just gonna run into with these aftermarket panels. Let me show you what I'm looking at right now. So I've got this panel in here, and I'm trying to align where my spot welds are gonna go on the flanges. And I'm noticing like, hey, it's kind of tight down at the bottom, but there's like this huge gap at the top. You know, I can push it into place, but it didn't make a lot of sense. So you pull this panel off, okay? And I noticed, like, I've got this edge flush, right? Or pretty close to it. Like, there's some work to be done on this flange a little bit. But then you get up to the top here and look, this lip. This lip sticks out maybe a ½ an inch from where this flange is. And that's how this edge is all the way down. So this lip is proud of this flange. Now, I do still have the original header panel. So let's go take a look at that real quick. Let me pull it out of the scrap pile here. All right, so I've got this panel out. Let's look at the profile on it. Now it's bent to heck from removing it, but what you actually see is this would have been the back side of the panel. And obviously this is all bent from prying on it, but more up here, if you look, this is flush. This little edge that's hanging over on ours by about a ½ an inch is flush here. So we're gonna have to resolve that. And I think, I think the easiest way for us to resolve that is gonna be to cut and notch where our other panel is gonna meet. So let me set this end panel back on and I'll show you what I'm thinking here. I'm thinking I'm just gonna notch this backside and this top edge, and then this normally would get spot welded through here. It overlaps and gets spot welded through the back, but because this is off by a ½ an inch, I can't really do that. So I'll probably just drill 2 spot welds in the top here, and then spot weld this down to this header panel here, and then it'll be welded all down the backside. I think that's gonna be the easiest way to resolve this issue. Otherwise, I mean, I was kind of manipulating the panel and I had it pretty flush before, but the other thing I was noticing was I probably have a bigger gap here that, like, I'm gonna have a larger gap here, but like I'm noticing like you got this huge gap here, right? And I'm like, well, I can pull it. You can see I can pull it into position, but that just didn't seem right and it's kind of warping things. And yeah, that's because of this overhang. Now, that's not going to take this whole gap up, right? So we're still gonna be able to pull this in a hair at the top to get it lined up, but it also isn't truly this far off. So it makes a lot more sense now. And again, this is just one of those things you're gonna have to deal with these aftermarket panels, right? They're not perfect. right? That's such a silly little thing. Just needed this corner to be folded over. This corner to be folded over, you know, that 1/2 inch back. It should have just been flush right to here instead of being carried back and over. So yeah, it's a little annoying, but I think it's a simple fix. I'm just gonna realign that panel on both sides. I'm gonna mark it where I wanna cut it and where I'm gonna notch it. I gotta think about that though, because now when I do that, it's important to think these things through. When I do that, what's gonna happen now is this back corner of the bed is actually gonna stick out past here. I don't like that. All right, I'm gonna have to think on this one for a minute, and I'll get back to you when I decide what to do here. All right, what I decided is I am gonna notch this out, right? So I've got it marked. It's kind of hard to see because I got black marker, but I'm gonna cut this back corner off. And then where this gap is in the panel, we'll see what it looks like once I get the end cap on. But if I need to, I might be able to work this edge back to the panel and get it welded, or even cut a very small piece that is kind of like an end cap here to finish that corner out and make it look a little bit nicer. Again, we're not building show trucks here, and we've got, you know, ill-fitting panels here. So we're just gonna make do and make it as good as we can make it here. And if something doesn't look right, then we'll take our time and make it look right. You know, we're not gonna half-ass anything as far as, you know, how the final look is gonna appear for what I'm going for here. So I'm gonna notch this out on both sides, and then I'm gonna get back to trying to fit those end caps in. And I'm actually kind of glad I found that, because as I was dry fitting things together, things just weren't quite lining up. And it felt like the end caps were cocked a little bit, and now it makes total sense why that is. And that actually makes me feel a little bit better, because I think we're gonna get a little bit better alignment on the body lines on the side of the bed now that I've discovered that. So let me get those notched out. Let's get the panel fit back in, and let's see where we're at. That's notched out. Let's see how our fit is now. Oh man, so much better already. That allows the panel to fit flush now, or pretty close to it. Just see, our body lines are pretty far off on the side though. So you see, you can see here. Remember, I had like a 3/4 inch, almost an inch gap here. Now that is almost completely gone just from taking this up. The one thing I'm gonna have to figure out, I'm gonna have to get my body lines lined up probably first, at least the dent and the body line here lined up before I go too wild on tacking this thing in the back. Just otherwise, I think it's gonna be difficult to manipulate this where it needs to be. So I think this almost has to be tacked in first, and then we get it lined up along the back header panel here. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit here. I'm gonna see if our holes line back here like I was previously talking about. If those all line up, I'm gonna go ahead and drill those out if they're close. And then once I've got everything drilled out, the next step really here is getting these body lines lined up and starting to tack this thing in place loosely to where I can then shift this panel over to the header panel and then start getting all that tacked in. So we're at kind of a crossroads here. Once I've got all my spot weld holes drilled, we really are about ready for the final assembly here. Getting everything tacked in place. Once we like it where it's at, we're gonna just weld it all up. I've got the end caps drilled and I've got the edges of it all cleaned up. Got that done on both of these panels. My spot welds ended up lining up perfectly. They're right where they need to be. Again, I got all this sanded down. Oh man, this side of the bed has so much Bondo in it. I hit this spot and it's so thick through here. I thought, oh man, that's pretty bad. That was absolutely nothing compared to the bottom of this panel. Let me see if I can get this up here. Oh my goodness, there's gotta be a 1/2 inch thick of Bondo in the bottom of these panels. And I don't get it, because the rust isn't bad down there. So I don't know what exactly they were doing. I'm sure further down the panel maybe it had some rust in it, but oh, they really mudded that thing in. So the next thing I need to do is I need to actually clean up the panels here. I need to clean up the weld line on these panels, and then I can actually start to try and manipulate these things and get them lined up where I want them. I'm just realizing this, all that Bondo in there and everything else, it's not gonna, this is not gonna be, it's not the ideal situation, right? Like normally you'd want really clean panels with minimal rust, minimal Bondo, minimal all that to try and get the panels lined up a little better. We get this thing 95% of the way there, it's gonna be pretty good. It's gonna be good enough for me. I'm gonna sand down my weld lines here, and then we're gonna get, I'm gonna actually work off of the dent in the body here, the Dentside, and getting these lined up. So I'll line this body contour up first, and then I'll work my way back up one way, and then I'll work my way down the other. I think that's gonna be the best way to go about this. Normally, if you're doing this where you took the 16 right out of the middle of this panel, you could theoretically start right at the top corner and just work your way down. It'd be a little simpler. I'm afraid to do that up here just because the way that I cut this with the different angles, I've already trimmed some of the bedside back a little bit. So I'd rather get this body line lined up. This is gonna be the most obvious thing, this and maybe this top corner. I'd rather get that lined up first and tacked in place, and then just work our way around. And then, yeah, and then once that's in, all we've got to do is get this flush, this panel flush to the back of the header panel and tack everything in. And then we're there. I mean, then it's just all the finish welding. So yeah, I'm gonna put a tack up here just to hold this in place in the top corner. And then I've got this just slightly overlapped. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut right down the edge of the outside cap and give ourselves a nice small gap to weld in there. And then we'll start lining up these body panels. And if I need to cut this tack to get things repositioned, I can do that, but I kind of need to hold this in place. Now my panel's not perfectly lined up yet, but what this is going to allow me to do is to now come in here and trim some of this extra out of the gap. So this is kind of important. If it's easier, instead of just butt welding these things together, it's easier if you do have a little bit of overlap that you can work with, to where you know, I can take this cap, I can lay these over the top of one another, and I can come in here with my cutoff wheel and it'll make a perfectly matching line between these two panels. So that's what I'm gonna do here. Yeah, and these are not permanent welds. These are just holding this in place for the moment so that I can manipulate the panel the way in which I need to. So yeah, I'm gonna now take the cutoff wheel and just work my way down this line all the way to the bottom, and I'll go right through that tack I just put at the bottom when I get to the bottom. And then we should have a nice gap to work with, and we should be able to work right down the line of this thing. GoPro died on me there, but I did get a few tacks in here. I've got it kind of flush down through here. I'm liking it so far. Looking good. I can see my gap is closing up a little bit as I work down the panel. So I'm actually gonna run my zip disc through here again one more time, and then we'll continue working down the panel here. Just trying to keep myself a nice even gap. Yeah, everything else is lining up pretty well at the moment. So yeah, I'm just gonna run the zip disc through here, maintain this gap down here, and then just kind of work my way down the panel. I think it's gonna turn out pretty nicely once it's all welded up. I got a pretty big gap up here. But anything I can't backfill with the weld, I'll come back in and fill in with little tiny pieces of slivers of metal if I have to. But yeah, I'm gonna trim this up first and we'll keep working down this panel. This side's tacked in. I'm pretty happy with this. Let's take a look at it. So you can see I've just got a few tacks up the side right now. And I want to kind of look down the body lines here. Everything lines up pretty darn nice. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's look down it from this side here. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very thrilled with that. The only place I have a little more gap than I would like is up here, but I think I might be able to fill this with weld. So we'll see. I noticed there's there's Bondo in the bed up here. There's Bondo down in the bottom, and that's the bottom actually is going to throw us off a little bit down in that bottom quarter where there's so much filler, but I think it's going to turn out okay once we get everything kind of where we want it and get it all welded in. I'm getting this piece clamped into place, and I just wanted to show you how I'm going about this. So what I'm doing is I've got one clamp up here kind of up in this corner. That's going to help us get the left to right, front to back lined up across the bed rail corner here. So I've got one clamp there. I've got this large clamp kind of in the middle of the panel holding the header panel and the filler panel tight together. So it's shoving the header panel, or the filler panel forward. And then I've got one more clamp down here in the bottom, kind of holding the inside bottom corner of the panel in place where it needs to go. If you look on the outside here, we've got a small amount of overlap here. So again, we're gonna come in here with a zip disc and just cut right down our body line. The one thing I'm gonna do, our bottom corner is still a little floppy down there. So I'm actually gonna draw that in and tack the very bottom of it. I seem to have a little bit of more of a gap down there. So I'm actually gonna draw that in to where it's flush at the very bottom and everything else is overlapped. And then we'll make our cut. And again, we'll work our way down the panel towards the bottom again, just as we did the last time. We'll get our two body lines here lined up. We'll go work our way up and then work our way down the panel. This is also a ton of filler down in this lower part of this quarter panel. So this is gonna be interesting to see how this welds up. Something happening. Oh, hot, hot, hot. Oh man, there's so much filler in this panel. That's why it's so far off. The body line is way off at the bottom. But you know what? It's all right. Ouch, hot. Actually, that's not too bad there like that. All right, that's just temporary. That's not terrible. There's like a 1/2 inch of body filler right here. So this body line down here is gonna be real ugly, I have a feeling. I've got a little overlap on everything else here. So I'm just gonna now run my zip disc down that body line, give us a nice clean gap to weld up. You know, I wasn't thinking about this earlier, but it is after midnight, and that makes it officially July 4th, which also makes it officially my birthday. So, I'm not gonna lie, this is a pretty nice little birthday treat for myself. I really love working on this truck, and even though it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm having a great time. So, yeah, tomorrow I'll celebrate the birthday with the family, but tonight is my celebration. All right, we got our cut down this body line. I actually like it a lot. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the bedside where we're gonna put our weld in, sand the paint back, and then we'll be ready to tack this thing in, get it in place, and get it all welded up. All right, the GoPro died on me the last time I started lining these panels up. So I wanna make sure you guys see it on this side. I've got all my welding surfaces cleaned up here. What I want to do is, I've got just a clamp up here in the top corner and a tack down here in the bottom, so I can actually move this panel around a little bit here. What I'm going to do is get this manipulated to where I like the alignment of the body lines here and here. And it looks like the easiest thing to do is going to be to get this lined up, and that kind of pulls this into shape. I kind of want this clamped in lightly. Okay, a little more than that. Because I want that to pull the panel back towards the header panel there. Okay, that's good there. All right, I like that. Let's see, I'm just gonna try and get this flush. Yeah, again, there's a ton of filler here, so I'm trying to get the panel flush, and I'm not worrying about the Bondo at the moment. Okay, just a quick tack there. That's gonna hold that in place. Now, what I've been using is just a little precision flathead here. I've been using that to pry the panel to be flush. So you can use it one of two ways. One, you can pry. You gotta be a little careful with that because you do pull the panels apart. The other thing you can do is you can use the blade, and it's not going to work in this instance because this is a tight curve here, but in other spots you can use the blade and actually push to make the two panels sit flush if you've got one sitting a little proud of the other one. I'm going to actually have to pry this one into place. Let's go about middle of this body line here. I kind of like that. And I'm just feeling for flush with my finger across there. I like that a lot. So I'm going to put a little tack here. Maybe. I don't have a very good ground. Okay, that's a really crappy tack, but it's tacked. And then we can go back up and adjust the panel as we need just to keep everything flush. So that looks good. I can get that flush, so I'm going to actually hold off. I want to get this bottom body line lined up. I like that. Like that there quite a bit. Okay, that's tacked there. Yeah, that looks really good. And now I'm going to come back up this way. And I'm just going to work this panel back and forth all the way up to the top and then all the way back down until we've got this sitting flush the whole way. It's a new day, and I'm finally gonna finish up this short bed conversion. I've been promising it the last couple episodes. Today we're gonna get it done. I've got a whole pile of welding to do, so I'm gonna get after it right away. First thing I need to do is get underneath the bed here and finish up the spot welds on the bottom cross member. Then we're gonna go to the header panel, and lastly, we're gonna finish welding up the bed sides. By the end of this video, this short bed conversion is gonna be complete. We'll be ready to move on to the next thing, which is more repair on the bed. So I'm gonna get after it right now. The last time we were under here, all we did was tack in all these spot welds. So they're not fully welded in, they're just lightly tacked, each one of them. So I've got to go all the way down this cross member and complete all of these spot welds. That's what I'm going to do right now. Those certainly weren't my prettiest welds, but upside down, welding some rusty floor. It was just like a little bit of bubble gum down there. Eventually what I'm gonna do with this thing is flip it up on the tailgate, have this thing standing vertically in the garage here. And we're gonna wire wheel the whole bottom side of this thing and repaint it to preserve the bottom side a little bit. So when we do that, I'll go back and I'll clean up some of these welds, but for now I'm not even gonna show them to you because they're pretty darn ugly and I don't wanna get called out for it. So. It's welded, it's good. Actually, I'll show you from the top side. I got good penetration, and shockingly, you can see, let's get in here. You can see where the spot welds are from the top side. And shockingly, I did not blow through this super rusty pinholed floor anywhere. So I was trying to be delicate in between the rust and just welding overhead, which I still am not very good at. It's pretty ugly, but. Moving on, we're gonna move on. Now we're gonna tackle the back of the header panel here. I'm gonna start in the middle and work my way out each side. We're gonna plug weld everything there, and then I'll work my way up the panels. We'll get the back of the panels plug welded in as well. And then the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start working on the bed sides. So there it is, finally finished. We got the short bed conversion finally complete. I got all the welding done. Let's go take a look at it right now. So I really tried to take my time on this, worked pretty slow, worked in sections, about 2-3 inch sections as I moved down the panel. I think it turned out really good. I don't see any severe warping or anything like that in the panel. What I'm actually considering now is how this may actually eventually end up looking. I'm actually considering just leaving this exactly as it is. When all the body work's done, I might come in here, do a light sand, kind of knock off some of the loose stuff, knock off the failing clear coat, and then shoot this thing with like a matte clear coat, the whole truck. That's what I'm considering at the moment. Let me know what you guys think. I'm definitely not going down the road of doing all the body work. We've talked about that. Because this was Grandpa's work truck, I want it to look like his work truck. I want the dents and the scratches and the dings and stuff in it. And that's kind of the reason why I'm shying away from grinding this all down, cleaning it all up, putting filler in it and repainting it. The rest of the bed's gonna be rough. So why not just keep it rough? Let's keep it real, let's keep it exactly like it looks. No surprises in this truck. It is exactly what it looks like. At least that's what I'm considering. So there you have it, guys. That's the end of this episode. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up. I'm gonna take a slight break from welding on the bed, and we're gonna move next to the Ford 360 engine here. I'm gonna get this thing broken down. I'm gonna get it put on the stand over here, and we're gonna figure out exactly what took this truck off the road 26 years ago. I think it's something in the valve train. I'm not entirely sure, but we need to start tearing this thing down, stripping out the rotating assembly, and getting it ready for machine work. I want to get this block off to a machine shop probably within the next month. And we've got a lot of work to do before we even get to that point. Not only do I want to strip it down, there's a bunch of oiling modifications I want to make to the block. We're going to clean the casting, you know, the casting slag and stuff up off the block. We're going to make it look really nice before we send it out to be machined. Once we've got it out the machine shop, we're going to have them give it a once over, probably do some cam bearings, do 30 over, deck the head surfaces and the intake surface, maybe do a line bore on this thing. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm going to drop it off and see what they think. But we're going to get all that machine work done, get it back in the shop, and then this fall we'll be dropping in a stroker crank, pushing this thing from 360 cubic inches all the way up to 445. So that is the goal for this thing. We're gonna tear into it next. The other thing I've got going, you might have got, I'll give you a little sneak peek here. I got myself some new toolboxes. These are the US General Series 3 toolboxes. And if you paid attention in my shop, you know I've been working out of a 5-drawer and a 4-drawer cart. This cart's gonna go away. I am going to do kind of a breakdown and review on the new Series 3 boxes in comparison with the 4-drawer and the 5-drawer carts. That cart over there is eventually going to become my new welding cart, and there's some things I just dislike about the 4-drawer cart. And now we've got a nice color scheme here, all green, to go along with our lovely new sign. So yeah, so that's going to be coming up too. And then after that, we'll get right back on this bed. We're going to be doing the fender well repairs before I chop I bob the back half of this bed. So I want to do the fender well rust repairs, the lower quarter repairs. I'm not sure if I'm going to do those before or after I cut. I think I might repair those quarters and then cut the section out and section everything back together. I think that might be the easiest way to go about that. So that'll all be coming up in probably 2 or 3 episodes here. So in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll get back on that. So that's going to do it for today. Remember, as always, guys, if you don't work on your project, I guarantee you it's not going to work on itself. So get out in the garage, get building, and I'll see you on next week's episode of Cody Builds.